Hello, everybody, and welcome to the episode 4 of the Fans Talk Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Freddie Carlson, as always, joined by my good friend Angelo Belli. Say hello, Angelo.
Hello, hello.
All right, and today, as we said in our last episode, we are back to talk about our top 10 tag teams in the history of professional wrestling. So, to kind of quantify how we looked at these lists just from a broad perspective, this is not strictly WWE tag teams. These teams can and are encouraged to include teams from outside of the WWE from over the better part of the history of professional wrestling. Obviously, it will have a lot more recency bias because we are younger fans. We haven't the means to be able to watch some old wrestling, but I can assure you, between the two of us, we both have some more legendary type tag teams and Hall of Famers on our lists as well. So the way that this will work, Angelo and I, for over the past week or so, have been compiling a list of teams that we have ranked personally into the top 10. We each have a handful of honorable mentions that we will discuss briefly before getting into our actual top 10s, and we will discuss why we believe that they belong there, why one of us may have put them in a certain spot as opposed to the other, and why one of us may not have included a team that the other has. So, Angelo, do you have anything to add regarding how you went about your list?
Um, I did it based on, I wouldn't just say memory, but it would just be from what I've seen. So, I've gone back and watched matches from, the 90s, the 80s, and even the late 70s, tag team matches. And, just based off of what I saw, that's kind of where I decided to choose, where to place these teams on my list.
Yes. So yes, we'll get into it now. I think that's the way that we both did it was very similar with variations in certain places. So I'm going to start off with my honorable mentions. I have two. Now this was really tough for me because I considered well over 20 tag teams for my list. I have a list of what I'm calling alternate thoughts, who I'm not going to get into for various reasons. But they're the ones who are like just below my list, just below what I would have put on. But getting into my two honorable mentions, number 12 on my list is the Fabulous Freebirds. The Fabulous Freebirds, a legendary tag team that innovated the Freebird rule, which has been instituted in more modern times by several tag teams, and most infamously by the New Day, who I will get into a little later on. Just a little bit of backstory on the Freebirds. They are three-time NWA National Tag Team Champions, two-time Mid-South Tag Team Champions, two-time NWA Mid-America Tag Team Champions, one-time NWA Georgia Tag Champs, one-time WCW Six-Man Tag Team Champions, six-time WCCW Six-Man Tag Team Champions, two-time WCW Tag Champs, two-time WCW United States Tag Champs, and they were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in the class of 2016. And my number 11, just missing the top 10, the Wild Samoans. The Wild
Ooh,
Samoans, who
hell of a team.
were three-time WWE Tag Team Champions, one-time AWA South, three-time Mid-South, one-time NWA National, two-time Stampede, two-time NWA US, as well as various other tag teams across the entirety of the United States and the North American continent as a whole, and were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2007. My reasons for putting these two just below it, they were innovators in many respects of the tag team form, most especially the Freebirds, as I said, with the Freebird rule, allowing that any two guys out of a group of three or more could potentially defend the tag team championships at any given time, and making for a little bit more unpredictability. And the Wild Samoans, just a very hard-hitting tag team that defined a family kind of working together back in the early days of tag team wrestling. So they are my two honorable mentions. And now, Angelo, your honorable mentions, I believe you said you have three.
Yes, so starting off at number 13, I have Tag Team Demolition. Just a little bit about them. They won the Great Lakes Championship Wrestling Tag Team Championship one time, the Keystone State Wrestling Alliance Tag Team Championship one time. The what the hell is this? They were ranked 59 of the best 100 tag teams during the PWI years in 2003. They won the United States Extreme Wrestling Tag Team Championship one time, the Universal Superstars of Wrestling Tag Team title one time, which was Axe and Blast. and the WWF World Tag Team Championship 3 times. 2 times being Axe and Smash, and 1 time it says Axe, Smash, and Crush.
Yes, I remember Crush, a alternate member at one point in the history of Demolition back in the early '90s, I believe.
Yes. And then going in at 12, I have the New Day, and number 11 being the Usos.
All right, so there's our first difference off the bat. I actually included both the New Day and the Usos in my actual top 10. They've ranked in the top 10 for me. So I'll get into them a little later. If you want to say anything about them now, you can. Otherwise, when I get to them, we can discuss in a little bit more detail. It's up to you. And otherwise, Demolition was on my list of alternate thoughts, but not high enough to crack my honorable mentions. Just below. They were like they were the last team I kind of pushed off of that top 12. Alrighty, so we will now be getting into our top 10s as we've done in the past. We'll each go one number at a time, so we'll start with number 10. We'll each discuss our number 10s, and we will move down up until number 1 and discuss each individual entry as we go. So starting at number 10 for me is the legendary Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Express. The Rock and Roll Express accolades include being 3-time Mid-South Tag Team Champions, 4-time NWA World Mid-Atlantic Tag Team Champions, 2-time NWA World Tag Team Champions. They have also held Tag Team Championships in a total of 21 different promotions in their history as a team, but never held Tag Team Gold in the WWE. However, they were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in the class of 2017. And for me, the Rock and Roll Express, when you think about classic tag team wrestling, they are a name that you hear everybody bring up. I have not seen much of the two of them as an actual team, but I know how highly regarded their work was considered from back in the 70s and 80s, or I believe it was the 80s and 90s, my bad. And you see nowadays with what they were able to do briefly in AEW when the Tag Team Championships were first instituted, and now in the NWA, they're older, but they're still killing it, and they can still move somehow. So that's number 10 for me.
Oh, that's a hell of a number 10, and for some reason, when I was doing this list, I honestly totally forgot about them.
Listen, there's so many.
I feel bad for that because they're truly like a pillar in the tag team.
Absolutely. That's the one thing about these lists too that I forgot to mention towards the beginning. And I hate to interrupt you, Angelo. Is that these are very subjective. My lists and your lists are going to be different because while there's some similarities, I'm sure, there's also a lot of variation. We each have different types of interests and beliefs, and that's what makes these subjective, but also makes it interesting because you get to discuss the different types of reasons for why we hold one team in higher regard over the other and vice versa. Happening to forget the Rock and Roll Express is totally fine because in the history of the business there have been a lot of legendary tag teams and it's very easy to forget them. But let's now see, who do you have ranked at number 10 on your top 10?
Number 10 is someone a team who I briefly spoke about, I believe, in the last list that we did, and that is the Rockers.
Ah, yes, the Rockers.
Shawn Michaels and Mario Jannetty.
An old school team.
Very old school. They were a team for, I believe, 7 years? I think they made their debut in, 85, and then the famous barbershop scene happened in, 92, 93?
It was 1993, right before Monday. It was right before Monday Night Raw began, because I know by the time the first Raw aired, Shawn Michaels was a single star.
Okay.
So it had to be late 92, probably, then, and it was the barbershop incident.
Yeah, so even though they were a team for that long of a time, they didn't really have many reigns. They won the AWA World Tag Team Championship twice, the NWA Central States Tag Team title 1 time, the AWA Southern Tag Team title 2 times, and the WWF Tag Team title 1 time. So for 7 years, that's not a lot of titles, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I just happened to look it up. The breakup of the Rockers took place exactly 1 year to the day before Monday Night Raw began. So on January 11th, 1992, But yes, the Rockers were the team that put Shawn Michaels on the map.
Oh yeah, having someone like Marty Jannetty, who I believe he is a little bit older than Michaels, having him show off his experience and basically taking Michaels under his wing to form the star that he was. That I think is what makes tag team wrestling great.
Yeah.
Is even though there are two competitors working together, later on or even beforehand, they form themselves as great single stars.
Yeah, and I think too they were the first team that broke up and set the bar for tag team breakups going forward. I mean, in many respects, you expect a team that's together to eventually break up for whatever reason, and I think that the initial reasoning kind of stems from what happened with Sean and Marty back in '92 was they were together for so long, and while they may not have had many tag team title reigns, they were well known, especially now looking back on how impactful that was for Shawn Michaels, being how one of the most important and legendary stars in the history of the business got his start in WWE. But yeah, I think now you always see the comparison of like who's gonna be the Marty Jannetty and who's gonna be the Shawn Michaels of a tag team. We've seen it a lot brought up in the storylines when like teams like Miz and Morrison broke up back in 2009, and in many ways Miz, who claimed in promos to be the Shawn Michaels of the team, in many ways kind of became that because he ended up having a longer stint atop WWE than Morrison, and more recently with DIY down in NXT. But yeah, the Rockers were very good, in-ring talents, obviously. I mean, Shawn Michaels, you can go on and on about some of the things Shawn has done.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But I did definitely an interesting pick. I personally did not include them in any of my thought process. They're not in any of my notes regarding the top tag teams, and I think that's a testament to how important they served in your time as a wrestling fan, and in importance to you as opposed to mine. And nothing against the Rockers. It's just I was never. I think that the bigger impact comes from Shawn's singles career and the subsequent fall from grace, if you will, for Marty Jannetty.
Oh yeah, definitely, without a doubt.
All right. So moving right along, we're going to get into number 9 now for each of us. And for me, number 9 is the Brain Busters. Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, who were at many a time included in the Four Horsemen, inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2012 as members of the group. They were also 2-time NWA World Tag Team Champions and 1-time WWE Tag Team Champions. And my reasoning for putting them in my top 10 as opposed to teams like the Wild Samoans and the Fabulous Freebirds, who are more accomplished in terms of championships as a duo, is because of the in-ring psychology that they've provided as a standard for years to come. I see a team like the Revival, now known as the Revolt, who have since they've left WWE, literally almost a carbon copy of that in a modern form. And that's what's so cool to me, is that a team in this day and age, when spot fests and high and flips and big spots are a big thing, they can turn it into a technical game and yet still put forth the best match of the night, like they did with American Alpha, like they did with DIY, like they should have done with teams like the New Day and the Usos and so many more on the main roster. And unfortunately, it didn't become that way. But like I know they're going to do on the independents when this virus passes and they can start working dates and have matches. I've been meaning to listen to their Talk is Jericho episode, but I hear that it was very good, and they have a list of teams that they want to face. And at the very top of that list, as we can all expect, the Young Bucks. But getting back to the Brain Busters, yes, putting them at number 9 was an important deal for me because they set the bar for modern technicians in tag team wrestling.
Well, definitely a solid pick for number 9. I mean, yeah, just like you said, I could definitely see them in the Revival. Number 9 for me is Edge and Christian.
Whoa! Okay. All right. I mean, they're in my top 10, but higher up.
I know, a little ways up.
Go right ahead. I'm intrigued.
But for Edge and Christian, they've won the WWF Tag Team Championship for a total of 7 times, and both of them have become single stars and have won the World Championship once each. Also, who could forget, they won the PWI Match of the Year 2000 versus the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys in Triangle Ladder Match at WrestleMania 2000.
Yeah, you said they both held the world title once. Edge is
Once each.
no, the world heavyweight Edge. Christian is a two-time world heavyweight champion because he won the match with Alberto Del Rio shortly after Edge's retirement.
Right.
Then lost it to Randy Orton and won it back thereafter. And Edge is an 11-time world champion. So, because I'm just going off of my notes. Maybe a typo. It happens. But yeah.
No, my bad.
Because I'm just going based off of my notes from what I have of them up above. But no problem. When it comes to them as a tag team, yes, it's 7-time WWE Tag Team Champions and set the bar for early, like, spot fest wrestling, so to speak. And I kind of say, listen, I love a spot fest depending on who's in it, the point.
Right.
And in the modern era, like nowadays, sometimes they're a little overdone. I'm not opposed to having a spot fest. They're good. Ladder matches typically become spot fests, but there were none better than the trilogy of matches that those three teams had back in 2000 and 2001. Mania 16, SummerSlam 2000, Mania 17. I mean, you can't outdo any. That's the bar. I know we've said that a lot, and I'm not talking about Sheamus and Cesaro, but that's the bar that was set years ago. And I mean, there's very little else you could say about how good those matches are. They are the pinnacle of spot fest as well as the pinnacle of modern tag team wrestling with three legit teams.
Right.
You know, and of course, obviously, one of the few instances where both members of the tag team ended up going on to massive singles success, as you mentioned as well, both in WWE and also in Christian's case, going to TNA for a few years and holding the NWA World Championship a couple times and being involved in big stuff there. So yeah, very interesting to see that you have Edge and Christian where you do. Like I said, I do have them higher, and I'll get into them a little bit more on my own personal stuff when we reach that point. But we'll move right along to team number 8 on our respective lists, and for me, it is the Hart Foundation, and in particular, the tag team of Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. They were the original Hart Foundation, not the latter faction that formed in the 90s with Owen and Bulldog and Pillman. I'm talking the late 80s Hart and Anvil. They were 2-time WWE Tag Team Champions and were inducted as a tag team into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2019. The infamous segment when Bret Hart was almost attacked by a fan, but still ended up being able to get up and finish his speech. God bless that man for being as good as he is with what he does. But yes, for me, the Hart Foundation, another early instance of a technical tag team that can put on a great match. They're not known for many like 5-star classics as a team. I just think that in the annals of WWE's tag team wrestling, they were the early standard bearers of the division back when WWE was first expanding into this larger televised brand. The tag team titles have been in existence in WWE since the 70s, but to me, the Hart Foundation was that first initial team that everybody knew when you're talking about it. So I look back at the list of WWE World Tag Team Champions in the 70s, and I recognized about 5 names out of every person to hold the titles from its inception to the 80s, when teams like the Wild, outside the Wild Samoans, like Hart and Anvil were. So for me, that puts them in a higher regard than some other modern teams and some other of the teams that I could have considered, and they are number 8 on my list.
Wow. Number 8 is a team that I just mentioned too, Team 3D.
Whoa, Team 3D at number 8. Okay, do tell.
So even though, I just had to pull this up too, because, I know they held many, many, many tag team titles.
24. 24.
It says here.
24. Crazy numbers.
It says here that WWE recognizes them as the most decorated team in the company with 18 World Tag Team Championship reigns, while Impact holds them at 23. And apart from that, I think in 2000, I think it says June 15th, 2014, at Slammiversary, they were selected in that year's induction into the TNA Hall of Fame.
They are, in fact, one of three, two of four individuals to be inducted into both the TNA and WWE Hall of Fames, along with Sting and Kurt Angle. They were inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame, as you said, in 2014, and the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018. And yeah, I mean, I have a lot that I'm going to say about the Dudley Boys when I approach them on my list. But yes, the most decorated team in the history of tag team wrestling, without a shadow of a doubt.
Definitely.
So moving right along to number 7, and I know this is a team that both Angelo and I have spoken about privately that is on our list, and that for me is the Road Warriors Legion of Doom. So for the Road Warriors, another very accomplished team, and we're talking Hawk and Animal. I know there was a revival in 2005 after Hawk's passing with Animal and Heidenreich. I'm not counting that. LOD05, I'm not counting. I'm talking 2006. 2006. I'm talking LOD 2000, the last real run of Hawk and Animal, and before. Obviously, from the late 80s into the year 2000 or so, Hawk and Animal were the Road Warriors Legion of Doom, and together they won 2 WWE Tag Team Championships, 2 IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team titles, 3-time NWA National Tag Team Champions, 3-time NWA World Six-Man Tag Team Champions, 1-time NWA World Tag Champion, 1-time World Japan Tag Team Champion, 1-time NWA International Tag Team Champions, and were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2011, with Animal representing both of them, obviously, with Hawks tragically passing in 2003. So for me, the Road Warriors and the Legion of Doom, until the days of the Triangle Ladder matches and the Triangle TLC matches, they had set the bar as the best tag team in the world. And in fact, all 6 teams on my list really came to prominence after the last true hurrah of the Road Warriors. So if this list were taking place 20 years ago, in my view, they would be number 1. And it's a testament to how important they've been to the business that I can still hold them in this regard. And I know many people still hold them in the same regard all these years later as one of the best teams to ever do it. You still see people using the Doomsday device, their legendary finishing tag team finishing maneuver, as teams today. Same thing with the Hart Foundation with the Heart Attack, but more so with the Doomsday device. And they are my number 7.
Wow. Yeah, I have the Road Warriors on my list. Actually, yeah, a little bit higher. Number 7 for me, I have someone that you spoke about before, being FK The Revival, now known as the Revolt.
Oh, wow, you got the Revival in your top 10.
Yes.
All right. I didn't include them, so I'm interested. I want to hear why.
So it has to do with, yes, I know they had the Raw Tag Team titles as well as the NXT Tag titles, and to be honest, I don't even remember. Did they hold the SmackDown Tag titles as well?
Yes, they did. They held them 2 separate times, I believe, trading them with the New Day in late 2019. I remember they had at least one, but I'm pretty sure 2 reigns with both the Raw and SmackDown Tag title. 2-time. They always love to say 2-time. 2 times in NXT, 2 times on Raw, 2 times on SmackDown.
Okay, so they, aside from holding all 3 tag team titles in the company, it's just they're not a gimmick. Like a lot of teams now, I see, they're a gimmick, they're fun, blah blah blah. These guys are serious about what they do. I definitely, like I said before, I see a new, like you said before too, like the new Brainbusters, and that's exactly what I think about when I see them. They're a true tag team.
Mm-hmm.
They have that chemistry together. I mean, they're still in their, I feel like, in their developmental stage. I feel like there's more of them to see, so that's why I have them at number 7.
Yeah, I think there's a very high ceiling for them. Obviously, they were not happy with how they were being used in WWE in many respects, being treated like less of a tag team and more of a comedy act. be that as it may, as I said, I haven't listened to their Talk is Jericho episode, but from what I hear, it expresses a lot of their disgruntlement, but also their desire to get out there on the indies and work these other other top tag teams in the world today, and really see how they can apply their craft in other places. And I'm excited because I really do like them as a team. I think that the ceiling, as I said, is very high for them, and they can really become a legendary team. We've seen so many teams that we've already been discussing, whether through honorable mentions or on our lists, that made their name outside of WWE, albeit in an era gone by. It's still possible, especially now with companies like New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor, and especially AEW being alternative options for wrestling outside of WWE, kind of like WCW and ECW were 20 years ago. So that's what makes this more intriguing, is a team like the Revival or the Revolt or whatever you want to know them as can go out and be themselves, be the team they want to be elsewhere from WWE, and maybe they feel like they can do better while not with WWE. And so it's an interesting concept for sure. I am excited, and I can't wait to see what comes next for the Revolt. So moving on to number 6, this is my first real, as I said before, from here on, these tag teams, the last 6, have made their impact somewhere in the last 20 years in this new millennium. So that goes to show how much of an importance they've had in more modern times. And for me, number 6 is the tag team duo of Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks. Now, it's crazy to think that a team like the Young Bucks can be so highly regarded in such a short period of time, but they're great. They really, really are great. I mean, if you look at how many titles they've won all around the world in their time as a tag team at wrestling, they're 4-time PWG World Tag Team Champions, 7-time IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Champions. They were able to move up to the heavyweight division before they left New Japan and won the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Gold. They also have three ROH World Tag Team title reigns, 2 Ring of Honor 6-man tag title reigns, and 3 Never Openweight Tag Team Championship 6-man tag team championship reigns. To their credit, they are 2 of the 4 executive vice presidents of the new company, All Elite Wrestling. They are, YouTube stars with their successful show Being the Elite. They're very talented in the ring. They had their unbelievable 5-star match with Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page earlier this year at Revolution, plus a whole host of other memorable moments and matches in their time as in the Bullet Club, and as well as in both Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And from personal experience, having seen them in person, they are one of the most athletically gifted tag teams in the world today, and dare I say, ever. And so for me, while they have never stepped foot in the WWE, what I stressed at the beginning of this list holds true. When it comes to tag team wrestling, the WWE isn't really the benchmark. It's very well documented. Vince McMahon is not a huge fan of tag team wrestling, and it's a unique difference to really see how they are treating tag team wrestling over in AEW as this big deal. And it's great because they really do treat it like a big deal, and I love that. And, these guys have made such a success for themselves outside of WWE, not having ever worked full-time as a top team there. They worked as Generation Me in TNA before moving to Ring of Honor in New Japan as the Young Bucks. And to this day, I still think that they have a very high ceiling. It's been a year in, and they haven't won the tag team titles in their own company. But I know it's going to happen one day, and I love what they've been doing with the tag team division so far. Having Kenny Omega and Hangman Page in there is a great way to boost the in-ring quality of the tag team work, to really make some of these younger teams like Jurassic Express and not SCU, but Jurassic Express and many of the other tag teams in Impact and AEW really make them feel comfortable working with very, very talented guys like the Bucks and stuff like that. So I'm very high on the Young Bucks, and I have them at number 6 because of that.
That's something that you and I have in common. We both have the Young Bucks at number 6.
Whoa, wow, all right, that's pretty cool. Not planned, but pretty cool.
No, definitely not planned. And I'm happy that you brought up all the points that you did, because I think honestly, I couldn't have said it any other way. I mean, you're right. Having the tag titles established in AEW for about a year, and they haven't even held the titles once. They haven't
Right.
even held them yet, and they still have plenty to prove.
Oh, absolutely. Their seal. I mean, I feel like I say this a lot, but their ceiling is very high still at this stage of
Definitely,
their
I mean the
careers.
amount of ceilings that they shattered already, like there, I don't think that there's a limit to it.
Yeah, I mean, they have so much in-ring talent. They're so well versed as a team. Obviously, being brothers, Matt being the 4 years out, 4 years the elder. But yeah, I just think that with more time in the big spotlight on national TV with AEW, it will only help their careers. It'll only help them in the ring, and it will only help their abilities from start to finish as active competitors. Um, but yeah, they're still. I think the Young Bucks could very well be continuing to move their way up this list as the years continue to go by, and we see more from them, and obviously less from some other tag teams that are either slowly becoming less active or are completely inactive at this stage of their careers. So for me now, we're moving into the top five. We're halfway through our list, and I am going to get into a team that you spoke of a little earlier, Angelo. And number five for me is Jimmy and Jay, the Usos, the twin
Nice.
brothers, sons of the Hall of Famer Rikishi. Usos are six-time WWE Tag Team Champions. And Angelo, you and I spoke about this, I believe, a little bit before the video, and maybe even while we were talking about them before. Um, the Usos have truly been one of the few faces of WWE's version of tag team wrestling for the past decade. You know, they made their main roster debut in 2010, and then and it took them until 2013 to really get over with the crowd. But those series of matches with the Shield, and then when they won the titles, and their matches with the Wyatt family and the
Mm-hmm.
Rhodes brothers, and Miz, and even the Miz and Damien Mizdow, and it was just, you know, they are able to have great matches with any team, and of course, I think their most legendary rivals and a tag team rivalry that will go down in history against the New Day, starting in 2017. Yes, they had matches back when the New Day were working as heels in 2015 and whatnot, but it really picked up steam once they were both on SmackDown, and the summer of 2017, those two teams just had some barn burners of matches. They were on the SummerSlam pre-show in 2017, and they had the best damn match of the night, and it was on the pre-show. I was the second best match of the night outside of the Fatal 4-Way main event. That tag team title match on the pre-show was the best damn match on the show. I mean, nothing against the other matches, but those two teams, I feel like they were more invigorated by the fact that they were relegated to the pre-show, and they were totally willing to upend everything that ended up being on the main card as much as they could. And to me, that was what was great. And the Usos, to me, still have a long ways to go. They are arguably the greatest WWE produced tag team of the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from and have remained a team. I truly don't foresee them splitting up. Um, Being twin brothers and looking so similar, and I don't ever see a singles push coming for Jimmy or Jay on their own. Whereas other teams, it can happen. Even with the Young Bucks, it could potentially happen. But yeah, Usos number five for me.
Um, Number five for me, I have the original Beer Money from TNA.
Beer Money, wow, I love Beer Money. I love them.
So aside from their I guess gimmick, that was very interesting. Um, they held the TNA World Tag Team Championship for a total of 5 times,
Yes, and
and
they had some good matches too
oh,
back in those TNA days.
definitely in TNA, they back then they were I feel like the only true tag team that TNA had
They were
at that period.
and they were TNA produced. They were TNA originals, and for years, guys like Rude and Storm and Daniels and Styles, they prided themselves on being TNA originals. Until the company went downhill, but they were proud to have been there since day one when they started working those small shows way back in 2002. I remember as a TNA fan, when I was around the time of their formation as a team in 2008 2009. I remember watching their matches with the Motor City Machine Guns and with the Dudley Bull or Team 3D in particular, and really, really loving them. And I got a soft spot for that theme song. I mean, beer, money. Oh man, that was great. I missed that theme song. And then they had a short-lived reunion tour in I think it was 2015,
2016, after James Storm left NXT for his little stint.
Yes, and then he went back to TNA. I think it was by then it was known as Impact Wrestling full time.
Yep.
And it was the last run that Bobby Roode had in TNA before he made the jump over to WWE and was in NXT by the end of the year. And I remember they had one last run as champions, and it was cool to really see them reunite. I remember when they broke up in 2011. James Storm defeated Kurt Angle to win the world title, and everyone in that place popped like crazy. And then a week later, Bobby Roode turns heel and breaks the tag team up and wins the world title himself. Oh, man. Tag team breakups continue to plague teams that are not brothers. And actually, even brothers never always have a chance. But yeah, I love Beer Money. Very interesting choice for number 5. I definitely see why you would include them.
Thank you.
So moving right along to number 4. And for me, it's another team that you spoke of earlier on your list, a part of your honorable mentions. And it is the New Day. The New Day are 8-time WWE Tag Team Champions. To me, that is a crazy fact that they formed in the tail end of 2014, so not even 5.5 years ago, and they have won 8 Tag Team Championships in that time, including the longest single Tag Team Championship reign in WWE history at 483 days. I was there the night that reign started, SummerSlam 2015. It was a Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match that also included the Primetime Players, Los Matadores, and I think it was the Lucha Dragons. Had to be the Lucha Dragons. And
yeah, something like that.
I just remember, at the time they were heels, and I still really wasn't a big fan of them. And that was their second title reign. They had won them right after WrestleMania 31, lost them to Tyson Kidd and won them from Tyson Kidd and Cesaro, then lost them to the Primetime Players, won them back from the team, and also I had to do this when I'm talking about the Primetime Players. They're getting millions of dollars. I was a mark for that, I'm not gonna lie. But talking about the New Day, that reign was legendary. Had some good matches. The triple threat ladder match at TLC against the Usos and the Lucha Dragons, where Kalisto hit that massive Salida del Sol off of the one side of the ladder through a ladder bridge. I thought that was a crazy spot.
What a memory.
That was a crazy spot. But yeah, and then they had that was around the time Bootios became a thing, and they started morphing into these super baby faces that the fans really couldn't hate, and then Bootios, and then the Pancakes and the Unicorns, and of course Kofi Kingston's infamous WWE Championship reign that stemmed from the New Day's popularity, bringing new life to the characters of Kofi, Biggie, and Xavier, which was the intended purpose when they first formed. And also too that long rivalry with the Usos. That they're the only 2 teams to compete for the tag team championships inside Hell in a Cell. I think that really speaks volumes, and I really truly believed that overall those 2 teams were are neck and neck. The New Day seem well on their way to establishing history in terms of the amounts of their WWE Tag Team title reigns. Currently in their 8th reign at the time of recording, having won them in a triple threat singles match where Big E defeated Jey Uso and The Miz.
And I think it was John Morrison.
No, it was The Miz, because Morrison competed in the ladder match, so it was Miz. And
it was Miz.
And then they had, and I gotta say, the Fatal 4-Way match at Money in the Bank was very entertaining. For a match that included the Forgotten Sons, yeah, I think that says a lot. I'm not a big Forgotten Sons guy. I love Miz and Morrison. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Miz and Morrison. I love them, but I'm not a big Forgotten Sons guy. So the New Day can really have a good match with just about any team. And to me, number 4, with room still to grow, if they continue to have good matches and good stories, be entertaining, win more titles. I do think that they're going to find their way moving up this list, as will the Usos with the similar prospect. So the New Day is number 4 on my list.
Number 4 on my list is actually a team who I don't think either one of us have mentioned yet, but definitely a pillar in what tag team matches have become now, especially with high spots, the Hardy Boys.
Ah, I will be getting into them very, very soon, but the Hardys, yes.
um, so I mean, there's really not much for me to say other than one of the greatest tag teams of all time. I mean, they've held the WWE Tag Team titles, the Impact Tag Team titles, and then they're both single stars on their own. I mean, even though Jeff is probably the bigger one out of the two.
Yeah.
I mean, Broken Matt Hardy became gold in what was it, 2016. I
Yeah.
feel like that's what really made me like love them as a team.
Yeah. So for me, number 3, which is the next number we're going to be talking about, was the Hardy Boys. So to kind of pad your discussion on their stats, together as a team, they've won 8 WWE Tag Team Championships. They've also won the WCW Tag Team titles 2 times in TNA and once in Ring of Honor. Of course, they had the legendary match against each other, known as the Final Deletion, in 2016. But as a team, yeah, when we discuss the Hardy Boys, we're talking about a team that kind of came up from nowhere. They were jobbing out in the mid '90s for WWE, and then they finally come together as the Hardys, and they really get over with the crowd, and they get into those ladder matches with Edge and Christian and the Dudleys, and it was great. And originally it looked like Matt was going to be the bigger single star, because when they first split up and one was sent to Raw, one was sent to SmackDown, Jeff had that one match with The Undertaker, the ladder match for the undisputed title, but that was really it. Then he leaves the company soon thereafter, and Matt Hardy, he's the Cruiserweight Champion. He's version 1 Matt Hardy. He's this uber heel, which eventually morphs into a babyface and the stuff with Edge. And then he's got that awesome rivalry where they had a great series of matches. That steel cage match in Unforgiven 2006 is low-key a banger. People forget about how good Edge versus Matt Hardy at Unforgiven 2006 in a steel cage match truly was. And then, he moves over to SmackDown. He has the stuff with MVP. He's the United States champion. But Jeff went to TNA, had some stuff, then comes back to WWE. Obviously gets that big singles push, couple of Intercontinental title reigns leading to 3 world title reigns before, by 2010, both men had left the company, went to TNA. Jeff again became the big singles guy. They finally win TNA Tag Team Gold, and it was 2015. Jeff gets injured in a biking accident. He's out for almost a year. So Matt moves into a singles role, finally gets to that world title scene, wins it from EC3, and then they had the whole issue with the world title series. I really didn't like that. 2015 was a really bad time for Impact Wrestling. Then Jeff comes back. Matt is now iconic. Ironically enough, becomes a tag team in WWE a few years later. Ended up using the gimmick better. And then he ends up becoming Broken. And once the Broken gimmick became a thing, and they had the Expedition of Gold in 2016 into 17, where they had the series of matches with Decay in TNA for the TNA World Tag Team titles, and then they went to Ring of Honor and surprised the crap out of the live crowd at the Hammerstein Ballroom.
Right.
Won the Ring of Honor tag titles, and then, WrestleMania 33.
Oh, right after, the night after.
The night after they dropped the titles back to the Young Bucks in a ladder match, which Jeff went on record saying he was hurting from, comes back the next night to WWE, the biggest pop probably of the year, and they win another ladder match for the Raw Tag Team Gold, and they were both back in WWE. I think that ever since those historic ladder matches with the other two teams which we've mentioned in depth, the trio of TLC matches and ladder matches, what more can you say about the Hardys? Legendary and very successful, very well accomplished, very well known, and will always be included in the discussion for the greatest tag teams of all time.
Definitely, and a future Hall of Fame induction for both of them as a team.
As a team or single stars, all I know is they both earned their place in the wrestling world. as single stars and as tag team competitors. And that's something that's very hard to do coming out of a tag team that's able to make two world champion competitors. We said it before with Edge and Christian, and I'll be talking about them very soon. But also for the Hardy Boys. So that number 4 for you, and then right away into number 3 for me. So covered 2 birds with 1 stone, and we'll move on to your number 3 pick.
Number 3 for me, I have the Road Warriors.
Ah, yes. So anything you want to add to what we discussed before regarding the Road Warriors?
So other than being a pillar in the tag team competition, I don't know if you mentioned it, but they did hold the titles for, I think it was 14 reigns, and they were part of the NWA Hall of Fame class of 2012.
Okay, so they went into I said WWE Hall of Fame class of 2011, but not the NWA. I did not know they were in the NWA Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no, I just had to do a little more digging on them, and I came across that. I was like, oh shit, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, we said in depth before how important they were to early tag team wrestling and how many teams imitate them nowadays. So that's great. So we'll move now to number 2 for each of our lists. And for me, number 2 is a team that we've spoken about in several different instances, both on your list as well as in various other entries. And that is Edge and Christian. For me, our number 2. I just think that Edge and Christian, having won all 3 of those triangle ladder matches, which was a big initial step, and as we said, arguably the tag team that saw the most singles success for both members. You know, when you look at we look at the Hart Foundation. Bret Hart went on to be this mega world champion, while Jim the Anvil Neidhart didn't really have a big singles career. The Hardy Boys, Jeff Hardy went on to this really big, great singles career with world titles in 2 different companies, and potentially still more to come in WWE, where Matt had some good stuff, but it wasn't until the last few years where he's really kicked it into a new gear. We've talked about Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, and we've talked about various other tag teams that didn't have singles runs. Edge and Christian both went on to become multiple-time world champions and really become bona fide single stars that can go into the Hall of Fame. And I got a bone to pick. Christian should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. If anyone disagrees with me, I really would like to know why. Because, Angelo, do you agree with me that Christian deserves more than many guys to be in that WWE Hall of Fame?
Oh no, he definitely does deserve it. I mean, think about it, multiple-time intercontinental champion, multiple-time tag team champion, a pillar in the tag team industry, like we've been saying, and he held the world title once.
He had 2 world title reigns in WWE,
or twice.
And I don't know the exact number, but he did go to TNA, and I think that and this isn't really the list to really discuss it in certain in certain depth, but I think that the 2004-2005 WWE Christian should have been a world champion.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, without a doubt. I mean, after that whole stint with Y2J, that should have led for something huge for him.
Yeah, in 2004, I mean, we all know the well known that Triple H was holding the world title on Raw hostage for many accounts. TNA in TNA Christian was a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. In 2005 and 6 and 7 when he left WWE and went over there, and I really think that he didn't get to have that accomplishment in WWE until after his best friend Edge had to retire, and they had that nice moment for him, winning against Alberto Del Rio, and that summer rivalry with Randy Orton was really good. But Christian, and he's also one of the few guys to work both very well as a babyface and a heel. Not a lot of guys can work both sides of the coin, and both Edge and Christian played both sides very well. Edge probably better as a heel than a babyface. Christian probably better as a babyface than a heel, but still, they can both do both sides of it. And I mean, the tag team was where they began, and 7 times in just a couple of years. I mean, 3-4 years working as a team in WWE, becoming tag champions 7 times together. Unbelievable. And Edge has held the most championships out of any WWE superstar in history. I think it's 31 or 32 overall championships in his WWE career, which is kind of crazy. So, for me, a very solid and very well-deserved number 2 on my list.
Number 2 for me is the Hart Foundation.
Ah, you have them a lot higher than I did.
Yes. Um, they won. They won the tag title only twice, I believe, right?
Yes.
Or 3 times, something like
Two
that.
or three. It was in that
Um,
range.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just saying it was in that range, two or three.
Yeah, and they were part of the Hall of Fame class of 2019 in WWE. But the reason why I put them in at number 2 is, personally, in my opinion, I mean, when you think of tag team, like tag team competitors, tag team wrestling, anything with the word tag team in it, automatically that comes to my mind is the Hart Foundation, Jim Anvil Neidhart and Bret Hart. And just like I said in my top, I believe it was the top 50 list with Lou Thez, you see a lot of people using the heart attack.
Yeah, the revival and the revolt, whatever either way, have used it many a time in their time in WWE at least.
Them and even Tyson Kidd and Cesaro.
Right. Yeah. And the Hart Dynasty,
Mm-hmm.
back in 2009-10, another forgotten tag team that actually was the ones that were the first team to hold those copper WWE Tag Team Championships.
Yep.
In 2010, their finishing maneuver was the Heart Attack, a direct homage to the Hart Foundation, obviously being members of the Hart family. Tyson Kidd, the last graduate ever of the Hart Dungeon. Natalia being their manager was the daughter of Jim the Anvil Neidhart. So lots of tie-ins to their current tag team wrestling, thanks to that.
Definitely.
And all right, so we have reached number 1 for our respective lists, and for me, number 1 is a team that we have already discussed from your list, and it will be number 1 for mine. And in my eyes, at least in my eyes, there is no debating that these two guys are the greatest tag team of all time. And rewatching their 2018 WWE Hall of Fame induction speech recently was my inspiration for thinking about doing this list, and that is Bubba Ray and Devon, the Dudley Boys. As we mentioned before, they are the most accomplished tag team in the history of the business. 24 tag team championship reigns across multiple companies, including a breakdown. They are 2-time TNA World Tag Team Champions, 1-time NWA World Tag Team Champions, 8-time ECW Tag Team Champions, 1-time WCW Tag Champs, 2-time IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Champions, and 9-time WWE Tag Team Champions. And as I said, they were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2018. And as I said, no team has spanned so many years, so many companies, starting in ECW, being this big tag team, winning so many titles in such a short period of time in one of the most crazy but hot wrestling environments the world has ever seen. And then going on and having awesome matches in WWE with the likes of Edge and Christian and the Hardys, and those legendary TLC matches, those 3 legendary matches, which we continue to refer to as the borderline or the standard bearer of what people strive for with tag team wrestling and with spot fests too. And overall, and then finishing their time in WWE and going to TNA as Team 3D and winning more tag team gold and creating more memorable matches with the likes of the Wolves and the Motor City Machine Guns, Beer Money. They were the team to beat in whatever company they worked together in for 20 years. And to me, that's the definition of the greatest tag team of all time.
Wow. Yeah, definitely agree with your pick at number 1 for the Dudley Boys. And, I mean, to put it in different words, I believe that they were true, like a lot of people would say for The Undertaker, locker room leaders.
Yeah.
Especially for the tag teams. Definitely deserving of number 1. My number 1 is a team I don't think either one of us have talked about yet. I honestly don't remember. I have the British Bulldogs. Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid.
Yes, I considered them heavily for number 10, but I don't know enough about them. I haven't watched enough of their work, but I don't doubt that they deserve that spot in any sense.
Just a little bit about them. They had held the tag titles for only 3 times. I believe it was only in the WWF when they had that, but they they were also ranked number 5 in the top 100 tag teams in the PWI years in 2003.
Yeah, yeah.
Top 5.
They're well known. Bulldog, and the team was cut short because I know Dynamite Kid had a lot of personal health problems, but
Right.
Bulldog ended up having a bit of a cool singles run, and I know that they were very popular. They were very popular in London and in the UK. I still remember,
and even in Japan.
yeah, I still remember in 1991 SummerSlam, Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog. That crowd was so hot, especially when Bulldog went over and won the title. So yeah, I mean, a very well deserved tag team to be included in the discussions. And I can totally see why they would be near the top, and in your case, number one. As I said, I love the fact that it's subjective because you just explained to me your reasoning for making them number one, and I totally understand it. And then as I explained my number one pick of the Dudley Boys, you understood my reasoning, and that's what I love about these types of lists, and why I think that some of the best discussion topics are doing things like this, is you can have a little bit of variety. I mean, we both had the same number 6, and we both had a few teams that were in the list in different spots, but we also had some other ones. You know, I included I included the Brainbusters, and you didn't. You included the British Bulldogs, and I didn't. So stuff like that really is a testament to how cool this kind of a concept is in my book. And overall, I would love to see in the next few years, especially with AEW, and I know that that's one of their goals, tag team wrestling continuing to grow into something that people can still enjoy and watch, and really keep people on the edge of their seats, because it has a lot more to give than people, well, than the WWE, let's be honest, has given it the time to have. And while it's had its moments, it's had its good times, it's had more bad than good, unfortunately. But I really would like to see that change in the coming years. So those are my final words regarding this list. Angelo, you have anything you'd like to add?
Um, I think you summed it up pretty good.
Well, as always, Angelo and I thank everybody for listening and for choosing us as your source of entertainment for this hour. We will be back very soon with another episode of the Fans Talk Pro Wrestling Podcast, but for now, please like, share, and subscribe. We thank you for your time, and as always, stay on it. Have a good day.